Okay, we're in the second half of Perek Yud Ches of Netzach Yisroel. We're in Daf Tuf Dalid in the Hartman edition on the second paragraph. Perek Malkum Shenogu. The Gemara in Psachim Daf Nun Dalid on Beis says, Zayin Dvarim Mechusim B'nei Adam. There are 7 things that are elusive from man. So the Gemara says that there are 7 things that are concealed from people. Elohein, these are the things. Yom Hamisa, the day of a person's death. Yom Hanechama, the day of a person's consolation, meaning, so Rashi says, the exact day, shall kol adam masa yisnachim medagosai. When will your anxiety cease? Meaning, the day where whatever you're worrying about will come to an end. That's not you're not going to be able to know that. Va'imek hadin, the depth of judgment. It says different pshatim. So Rashi says the depth of judgment, haroiv toyim by. Inami oimek hadin ha'asir. So Rashi says the two pshatim are is it pashat means that most people, what's concealed from most people is the depth of judgment. First pshat is just practically most people misjudge situations all the time, and oftentimes you'll never know about it. So if you're a judge, you'll actually judge situations incorrectly, but it just means you make a judgment call. People make judgments call all the time. That's incorrect. But the second pshat is it means the judgment of the world to come. That's a little bit easier to understand because it says that it's concealed from people. The fact that you make a mistake is often concealed from you, but not all the time. But the judgment of Olam Haba, that's taka concealed. The next one, a person does not know what his fellow is thinking. You never really understand what another person is going through. Number 5, you don't know what business activity will earn you money. You could think you know, but it's not. The stock market is not a guarantee. Umalchus beis David masay tachzer. When will the Davidic dynasty return? Umalcha chayeves masay tichla. And when will the evil government of Rome fall? So those are the 7 things. It says Beer Indians. The explanation is as follows: Kiyoim Hamisa, the first of the list, the day you'll die, hu bavadei chutz l'gvul. That's obviously something that's out of the realm of possibility for the average person to know. And he says, Shlo yischaber imay begvul davar, in number 56, Pirish, Lo yischaber im yoimisa davar hashayich l'tchum shel adam. The day of death, which is the end of life, is not something that a person who is living his life will be able to connect to. It's pashut. He says, Shu ederloi, it's the opposite, it's the outside of his boundary. Ve'eder bevadei chutz mimenu ve'ena begvuloi. You're only able to connect to something that's within your grasp, within your understanding, within your lane, so to speak. The last thing that a living person can connect to is the situation of not living, and therefore it's bevadai, outside of your realm. I mean, even the way he's describing it, it's not just like Hashem wouldn't be harsh enough to tell you. It's not shaykh for a person to be able to connect to the day where he no longer lives. There's a disconnect. There's a bridge that you can't pass. And he says, therefore it's hidden. So too it is the day of your nechama, the day of your anxiety ceasing. He says, so too it is the day of the nechama, the day of a person's nechama for whatever he's worried about. It's also hidden from a person. Why? Because when you're in a tzara, you're consumed by that worry. The nechama is sort of outside of where you are. He says, again, you're completely consumed by that worry. Again, the nechama is sort of a different stage of life. It's like the next stage. I can't get to the next stage when I'm in that stage. And he says, that's like, it's literally like a new life. In the same way, death is outside of me because I'm completely immersed in life. I can't connect to that next stage. So too it is when someone is, let's say, going through an illness, you're completely consumed. That's your new tkufa. You're now ill. I cannot connect or be aware of the tkufa when I will not be ill. It's outside of my boundary. It says, maybe this is what that means, maybe you're alluding to it. The Gemara says, Ein chavish mater atzah beis asurim. Someone who's in prison cannot release himself. Meaning, even if I could release you from a prison, I can't release myself. Mm-hmm. And the Gemara talks about this, how you had tzaddikim who were able to heal others, but they couldn't heal themselves. Mm-hmm. And the Gemara was wondering, like, why is it like that? So the Gemara says, when you're in prison, you can't release yourself. Mm-hmm. Even if you normally have the keys, can't do it. Maybe that's a pshat, because when you're in something, I can't relate to outside, meaning you have to be outside of the tzara to be able to sort of reach in and grab someone. But when you're in it, you can't leave that kufa. And he says, again, it's a tkufa that's outside of you. The next one is oimek hadin. Again, whatever the pshat is of oimek hadin, oimek hadin ugamkin mchusim, and it's also hidden. Ki hadin muskul mechuyev. Din is something that seichel requires, seichel expects to have the right approach. Ki shar dvarim shehem efsharim. There's always possibilities when I'm trying to figure out what's truth. There's always possibilities, but the real truth is the only one that must be. It sort of must be. Oimek hadin doesn't just mean a decision. A decision is always within my grasp. But the real truth, the real decision, is not always something that I'm aware of. Because you're, again, I think he means very practical, because the Oimek Hadin is completely fact, it's completely rational fact, it's completely seichel. A person, by the very nature, is gashmius, and that's not, there's emotion, there's negias, there's other aspects that block it, and therefore, unless you're a completely a chayfetz, it's completely seicheldik, you won't be able to fully grasp din, fully. You might be able to get 95% of it, but there's going to be some aspect that you're putting your perspective, and it's going to affect the outcome. And the only way to do it is to be completely seichel. It's not even just to, because again, we think of it as a simple thing like what's right and wrong, but to get down to the real truth of all truths, there's barriers. The barrier is the physicality, the emotion, all the other aspects, your past experiences, past trauma, and all these things that affects, decision making. Look at number 64, Pirish. Because he said like this, go back to 2 lines on the top, and then we'll do the bottom again. The only thing that must be is the Sibur Rishona, which is Hashem. And you cannot fully grasp HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So what does it mean? Pirish 64. The same way a person cannot fully grasp the Creator, so too a person cannot fully grasp the depth of judgment. Why? Bifrat hu el Hashem Yisbarach. Hashem Yisbarach hu mukhrach hametzias. There's a connection between HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which must be, and Mishpat, which also must be. Again, I don't know fully exactly this Nakuda, but what he's saying is that That's what. Mishpat must be. Mishpat means din. Din must be. The only thing that actually, meaning all things that are inevitabilities, stem from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And because you can't understand Hashem, you cannot understand din, which also stems from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This detail, I'm not 100% sure exactly what it means, but we'll go weiter. A person won't really know what he'll make money from, right? You don't know if you know where to drill to make oil. You don't know exactly what business deal is going to make you money. This is also elusive. Because parnasa is out of you. Parnasa is shefa from Hashem. Parnasa doesn't come from this world. Parnasa comes, it's from the oilam ha'emes, and it's just coming down in shefa, and therefore you're not going to know what pipelines will allude to that. Meaning, parnasa is not something that's just sitting there waiting for you. Parnasa is HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends down shefa. Hashem sends down parnasa. In Shemayim it starts off a certain way and it trickles down and eventually becomes cash. But because it's coming straight from a world above ours, we won't really know exactly how it'll permeate and where it will reveal itself in this world. No, it's a good point. I would assume the purpose of this Gemara is just to relinquish control with all these cases, to remind yourself you're not in charge of parnasa, you're not in charge of this, you're not in charge of that. Now some of them Some of them we sort of hold on to. Some of them we give up easier. I'll mention this because it's like a famous verse. It's a good verse. I'm sure you've heard this. The Dubna Magid gives a mashal. The pasuk says, "Hashlich al Hashem Yehavcha v'yichal galecha." To throw your burden, your pekalach, your backpack to Hashem, He'll take care of you. So it's talking about Emunah, to give it over to Hashem. So Dubna Magid gives over Emunah. He describes Emunah in the following mashal. You have a wealthy person, a wealthy Jew who's in a horse and buggy, and you heard the story, and he sees a poor Jew on the side of the road with a big bag. So he says, "No, I'll give you a ride." So the poor Jew says, "No, I don't want to bother you. I don't want to." He says, "I'm going anyway. It's not a bother." So finally, he convinces him to go on the horse and buggy. He notices after a few minutes that the poor Jew is still holding the backpack on his shoulder. So he says, "Put it down. Get comfortable." So the Jew says, "It's enough. It's enough for you to carry me. You shouldn't have to carry my bag also." So it's obviously a foolish zach because it's being carried anyway. The horse is schlepping the bag anyway. He's just holding on to it. So Dubna Magid said that's sort of how our emunah is. We're willing to get on the horse and buggy. And we believe in certain aspects of emunah. Like we believe Hashem gives us life. And He's helping us breathe and helping us out. But we still hold on to our certain bags. Right? Certain bags is still me. And it's foolish. David HaMelech says, "Hashlich Hashem Yavcha." You're getting a ride anyway. Take your bag off, and that's the point. So of all these things, it's a good point because some of them, I think that the day that a person dies, that I think we all agree is not in our control. That's out of control. Parnasa we hold on to. Parnasa, that's me. And the truth is, it's all foolish because once you acknowledge that certain things are out of your control, then you realize they're all out of your control. But anyway, it's a good point that maybe that's what the Gemara is trying to give over, and he says. And even if a person convinces himself, "Oh, this is how I'll make money," you don't know for sure. It's impossible. Again, it's practically impossible to know. The depth of why it's impossible to know, it's because it's coming from a shefa and oilam emes. But practically, it is impossible to know. You could think that, and then you could take on a case which you thought would make you a lot of money, and then it ends up costing you more than you realize. Or you could take on a case that you didn't think was going to make you any money, and it turns out it makes you a lot of money, and that's just the derech of it. The next one on the list is we don't know when the kingdom of David will return. That's also out of our world. I'll prove it to you. Because you'll say, well, what do you mean it's out of our control? I could tell you exactly when it's going to happen. We'll have a Beis HaMikdash. He said, that's not true. We had a Beis HaMikdash. The second Beis HaMikdash they built. They didn't have the Davidic dynasty. It wasn't returned. He says, they had the bias. And Beis David didn't come. It's like a big thing that people make a mistake. That people always think we're waiting for a Beis HaMikdash. We had a Beis HaMikdash. We're not waiting for a Beis HaMikdash. We're waiting for Mashiach. It's different. Mashiach will build a Beis HaMikdash, but in people's minds, what we're waiting for is like peace in Eretz Yisrael with a Beis HaMikdash. We had that with David and Shlomo. We're not looking for that. We're looking for something much more. And we're not just looking for a leader of Moshe Rabbeinu. We had that too. We're looking for a change. We're looking for something we've never really experienced before. And that's what he says. So we're not just, Davidic dynasty is not something that you could just snap your fingers. You need Mashiach for that. And that's the next world. And that's not something that we could, that's a bridge that we can't pass. He says, V'davar zeh, tzarech tam nifla ma'od. Ki lama leichaz l'malchus b'is David gam kein. Sure, it's wondrous. Why didn't the Davidic dynasty return? And he says, he brings that on the bottom just to add to the question. In the Gevuras Hashem in Perek Mem Zayin, the Maharal basically describes how the whole koyach of having a Beis HaMikdash is in the schus of Malchus Beis David. The Beis HaMikdash is a place to house the Shechina with the Hanhaga of Klal Yisrael through the king of Malchus Beis David. So like the whole schus that we have a Beis HaMikdash is because of David HaMelech. So the fact that you had a Beis HaMikdash without him, right? He was the one. It's his bias, right? It's his bias. David and Shlomo Mamish built the house, and the fact that we had the house without them is wondrous. It's a wondrous thing.
Didn't have the Shekhinah.
Correct. True. It's a good point. You didn't have Hashem much either. Right. But the point is, how you could have that without the Malchus Beis David is a very strange thing. And he says, Malchus Beis David Shloheh Kedaili is Malchus Beis David Ada Osid. It's a little bit what you said. It's not a negative thing to Malchus Beis David. On the contrary, that's how special Malchus Beis David is, that they weren't deserving of Malchus Beis David. Only when the world is perfect will we get, when Mashiach comes, will we get the Davidic dynasty again. Lefikach, ein adam yedei masei tachas Malchus Beis David. V'im lo haya Beis David kol kach b'may lo haya efshe Malchus Beis David levatal Malchus Revius. And he said the truth is, if Malchus Beis David was not that special, then you wouldn't need them to destroy Edom. As we've described over the last parak and a half, Edom is very powerful. It's the most powerful force that this physical world has seen, because they're connected to the sun. And who will eventually destroy Edom? Mashiach ben David. It shows you how great the Davidic dynasty is, that you need that to kill the super boss, in the video game, that you need Malchus Beis David to return to overthrow Edom in the form of Mashiach. And he says, "Lefikach behecher tzarachat aloymer shemalchus Beis David malos and ma'ila she'eni dias adam toivus sham." And we can't sort of comprehend its greatness because we can't sort of comprehend anyone that can overthrow Edom. Edom is too powerful. So if it's so powerful, the being that will overthrow it is beyond our grasp, and that's returning of Malchus Beis David. V'chein Malchus Revius masai tipol, and also when Edom will fall, shekvar bi'arnu lach lamayla, as we've described earlier, in the beginning of the 17th parak, that we cannot fully understand and grasp when this Malchus will fall. That's why we can't really, we've been waiting for Mashiach for so long, we don't know when it's going to happen, because the Malchus is that powerful physically. It doesn't make sense. If you were to look right now, forget about Trump, if you were to look right now, to think that there would be someone that could overthrow America and Europe, how? And you can say, well, nuclear weapons, that'll just destroy everything. To overthrow without nuclear weapons, what type of coup would you have to take over America, North America and South America and Europe? And then, by the way, once you stop, then you got to take over Yishmael too. So, and you're talking about what type of weapons you have? Nothing, on a donkey. So that's something that we can't fully grasp. So he says, Yaakov, and this goes back to the beginning of the previous parak. The Yaakov sees Edom walking up, the angel of Edom walking up the ladder. He doesn't see him coming down, because from this physical world, I don't see this happening practically. That he says, now we'll understand why Asher Charfu Ikvis Meshichenu Kasharor Chagalos. The Gemara says that there were people that basically they would give dates of when Mashiach would come, and the negative thing about that was that when it didn't come, they stopped hoping. The reason why it's such a devastating thing, you understand why they stopped hoping, because they're seeing this is not real. But that's why you got to just hope. You can't try to figure this out, because it doesn't make sense. And he says, Amnam Yisbarach Oid Dvarim Kvushim Tshuva Sheila Zos B'Prakim Haboyim Bez Hashem. But we will talk more about this in the future prakim. Kashetir Shilton Malchus Revius Vasher Meshemaya Nasan La'archa. That when you see the rule of the fourth kingdom, Asher Meshemaya Nasan La'archa, that from Shemayim they gave it arichos, longevity. Yiturtz L'Chashela arichos Galusenu. It'll sort of make it more understandable why we're in Galus for as long as we are, because again we're waiting for it to fall, and al piteva it's very, very powerful. The truth is, Chazal tried to touch on this in the Medrash in Shmini. It says, "Ba'aser dona chaza have bechazoi laila v'aruchi revia dechela v'msana v'tekikva yisera." It's a pasuk in Daniel. And look at number 79. He explains it's Aramaic. So he says, Pirish, Lachar mikan, after Daniel saw the first three chayas, Reisi balayla acher, I saw in the next night, V'nichai revius, Me'emas v'imsonis, Ubailus toikef rav. I saw a frightening, very powerful fourth wild beast. So back to the top, Zumalchus revius, this is referring to Edom, to Rome, Christianity. Daniel Ra Shilshatan Balayla Echad. He saw the first three in one night. Lazais Balayla Echad, and this one in a separate night. Let's look at number 81. Pirish. Daniel Rosh Shloisha Chayis Hamalchis B'Mayra Nevuah B'Layla Echad. He saw the first three animals, which allude to the first three exiles in one night, because that's the point. They were one category. They were a category of power, but within nature being overthrown. Ve'ilu esachai revius, but the fourth one, Ra B'Layla Echad, he saw it on a different night, because it's its own category. It's its own sug. V'lama, and why is this back to the top? Why is he saw on a separate night? Because the fourth one is equal in power to the first three. Rish Lakish Amar Yisera. Rish Lakish Amar says more than this. Pirish, number 82. Rav Yechon holds that the fourth is equal to the first three, and Rish Lakish says no, it's more powerful than the first three. Pirish, Ki Gimel Malchus Ra Daniel Balayla Echa Keneged Gimel Mishmarish Yesh Balayla. Depth is like this. The three Malchus that he saw correspond to the three Mishmaros that are every night. If you look at number 83, Kimavur Begin Brachas. The Gemara says in Brachas that there were three Mishmaros in the middle of the night. Each Mishmar, in there are three rotations of Malachim and Shemayim, guarding the Kisya Kavod, whatever this means. Three rotations. And the Gemara says, he said back to the top, V'chol Mishmar min alayla neged Malchus Echad. Each Mishmar and Shemayim corresponds to a different kingdom. V'im Gimel Malchus. L'kach Rosh Lishon B'alei Echad. The next night he saw just the Edom, because Edom has the whole night. Right. Meaning if Paras, let's say, only has a third of the night, and Bavel has a third of the night, Edom has a whole night. Right. So he says, V'zeki Hashem Yisbarach Gazer al Yisrael. Also, by that makes sense of why it's the whole in of Tikkun Chatzos is at night. Tikkun Chatzos is said in the middle of the night, in the middle of the Mishmaros, to mourn the Churban. It's also interesting that the exiles are referred to as mishmaris in the night, which is when Tikkun Chatzos takes place. It's interesting. V'zeki Hashem Yisbarach Gazer al Yisrael achi mishbadim tachas u'umais mikol chalkeim. Hashem decided that Klal Yisrael will be meshubed to these four nations. Again, the first three nations have their own night corresponding to each nation being a different mishmar in the night. And then you have Edom, which has its own full unit of a night. Why is it that Klal Yisrael were subjugated by these three different kingdoms, corresponding to three different parts of the night? Because a person has three different components. You have physical, you have spiritual, and you have intellectual. I think it would be physical, emotional, and spiritual. However you describe it. Here, let me explain. The way the words are physical, gufay, nafshay, and sichlay. So physical, intellectual, and spiritual. I think that the way I always understood the Maharal is saying, what do you mean spiritual? So I always felt that it was manifesting itself emotional. Because the emotion is the most direct relation to the spiritual. So you have the three, like, you have your physical, like, how are you? There's physically, intellectually, and emotionally. Okay. That's always I looked at these three components of a person from the Maharal. No. Again, I could be wrong. That's always I understood the Maharal. He says, "Ve'elu achalokim ein zakazeh." There are three separate components. And a healthy person has all those three components. And he says, and the fourth one is the whole person as a whole. To me, he says the fourth part is the chai, is the medaber, is the tselem. I always felt that was the neshama. Meaning, you have, if I were to split you up into three different parts, you have the physical component, you got the intellect, and you got the emotion. But what's binding it all together and what makes all of them meaningful is the neshama, is the soul. The soul, physically, you're hurt. What do you mean you're hurt? If you have no soul, you're a piece of flesh. So the only reason why you're feeling anything physical is because the nefesh. You want to call it nefesh, Bahamas, nefesh, whatever it is. Intellect also, it's nefesh. Emotion, it's all nefesh. So I think that's how I always understood that there's physical, emotional, intellectual, and then there's the neshama, which sort of takes all three and makes it one. He says, so back to the Maharal, that you have the three components of a person, and then you have the fourth, which sort of is Koil HaKol, which puts it all together. L'kach Daniel, Ra Gamal Malchius B'Laylecha. By the way, you can already see a little bit outside, it's the bottom of the left side, where he's going with this, that the three components of a person, the emotion, intellect, and physical, that corresponds to the first three. But then you have Edom, which has its own unit. That's the fourth, which is Kail HaKol. V'ra Malchus Revius B'Layla Miyuchad, v'Zeki Gimel Malchus Harishainis Im Keneged Shleisha Chelki Adam Malchus Revius Neged Hadim B'Chlalei Shu Kail Shoshan Yachad. That's what he's saying. V'Halayla Nichlak L'Gimel Mishmares, and the night is corresponding to is broken up into three parts. K'de'isa Perakama de Brachas, as the Gemara tells us in the beginning of Brachas. Taner V'Lazarim Megim Mishmares Havelayla. There's 3 night watches in Shemayim. Ve'Kol Mishmar, and at the beginning, during each watch, Hashem roars like a lion, mourning over the Churban. Shenemar Hashem Mimorag Yishag Shag Yishag. It says Shag 3 times. V'Simin Ladavar, and how do I know what's going on in Shemayim? So the way you could tell down here what's going on in Shemayim is Mishmar Rishayna. By the first watch, Chamar Noyer, donkeys bray. The second watch, Klovim Tzoikim, dogs bark, and Shlishas Tinik Yonig Mishtei Imai, Ishim Misaperes and Baila. The third watch, the child nurses from the mother, and the husband and wife talk, because the wife wakes up, so they're in bed, they're shmuzing. V'yesh Lishal Gemara, V'yesh Lishal, Lama B'chol Mishmar Eshar Kadosh Baruch Hu Shayig, Oili Shechravdis Beisi. Why is that Hashem mourns over every watch? It's an interesting point. Mourn once a night. Each Mishmar you have to mourn. The answer is, according to this, makes a lot more sense. Each Mishmar corresponds to a different Churban. So it's sort of like reawakening that pain, Kaviyachal to Hashem, each time. Right. And he says, night is alluding to darkness, to Galus. And that's why by Esther, it's coming up, Geula is Ar, Haisa Ayra V'Simcha, Akach HaLayla Simin L'Galus, Ukamaisha HaLayla Nichlak L'Gimel Mishmares, Kach HaGalus Nichlak L'Gamal Chalakim, V'Doim L'Gamri El Mishmarshim Layla, Kim Simin El Shleisha Chalki HaGalus, Kach Baruch Hu Yoshev Shekol Kol Mishmar. Therefore Hashem is reawakened in that pain, because each one corresponds to a different aspect of Galus. Ki B'Tchila Kasher Bo B'Galus, Hayinoisim Ola Yisrael, Machbidim HaGalus B'Yoser. But you saw Noisim all. They see that first Galus was very devastating, because you went from Mamish, Yerushalayim, to Bavel. That was very, very physically taxing, like a donkey braying. Achi Yisrael K'mei HaChamor, Shenoisim Masa Gadol. Zel Tchilas HaGalus, Hayonoigen Kach, V'Malchus Bavel. By the way, even in the beginning, I told you, Kabbalistically, the first third of the night is the most devastating spiritually. So you don't say Slichas the first third of the night. You have to wait until Chatzos, because you got to wait until the first part of the night ends. He says, V'zeu tchilas hagolus hayonoigim kach, v'malchus bavel. Kach hayechelik harishim min hagolus. Chelik habeis min hagolus hayidar shel shmad. The second was shmad. It's a very interesting point, because I was thinking the second Galus was Purim. The second Galus is Purim. I mean, it's Paras and Madai, which is Nebuchadnezzar, is Purim. Right? Yeah, the first one is Bavel, then Paras, which is the Purim story, then Yavan, which is the Hanukkah story, and then Edom. So he's saying the second one has to do with Shmad, has to do with like decrees against Klal Yisrael, like genocide. The Shmad means like decrees to uproot religion. The first one is physical destruction, just pain. The second one is decrees to uproot religion. So what does that have to do with Purim? So on the bottom he explains in number 103, you should know. Gimel Mishmaris Halayla, Einon Makbilas B'diyuk L'Malchis Bavel Yimada Yavan. The Maharal doesn't believe that each one corresponds specifically to a different nation. Rather, Gimel Mishmaris Yishbitul Shleisha Mahalchim Shel Galus. It corresponds to 3 different devastations of Galus, which is Shibud, Misa, V'Gerishim. Subjugation, death, and expulsion.
So which one's which?
Shehim Kneget Tchilas Halayla, Emtsos V'Soifai.
Which one's which?
So the first one is Shibud. The first one is suffering. The second one is genocide, and the third one is expulsion. That's the thing. Enslavement means just physical pain, just suffering, so and that was by Bavel. I guess that by Bavel, just they were taken as slaves Israel. They were taken as slaves to Bavel. I mean, a lot of them were taken. There was a massive slave unit that were taken from the Jews into Bavel by the first Churban. The second one is Taka. It does work for Haman. It's Haman. Right. Haman is genocide. Shemad is genocide.
And this is the period before the second Beit HaMikdash.
Correct. So
that's the
and then the third Galus actually happened during the second Beit HaMikdash, which is Yavan.
Right.
So we'll get to that in a second. He says Chelik Beis Min HaGalus HaYidar Shel Shmad SheYigoyzim Leim Misa Mishmad V'Keneged Mishmaras HaShniya Sheklavim Tzoyakim. That's dogs barking. Uklavim Tzoyakim Hu Simen Misa. The Gemara says that when dogs bark, it's a sign the Malach HaMavis is there. So that's how responding to Haman. She'amru Klavim Tzoyakim Malach HaMavis Ba'ala'ir. Kacha Yechilik Beis Min HaGalus Shayu Hargin Behen Misa Noisim. L'kacha Mishmaras Beis Klavim Tzoyakim Shu Simen Yalalu Misa. Barking and crying out. Gamaz HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yoshev V'Shoy Kari. And therefore Hashem is also mourning because it's a new type of pain. It's a new type of suffering. There's suffering and there's genocide. And Chelik Gimel Min HaGalus Ein Shmad. There's no Shmad. Hashem Yisbarach Yishmar Am Yisrael Mizeh. V'noigim Umas Im Yisrael K'may Shenoig HaBaal Misha. K'umas Nechshavim Baal Yisrael Begalus. Over there, the third one is just degrading subjugation, meaning it's just treating Klal Yisrael as less than, like a husband treating his wife less than, that they're subordinate. And what happens when the husband doesn't like the wife? Expulsion. That's the third aspect of Galus. He said before that the first three aspects of Galus are not necessarily directly Bavel, Modai, and Yavan, but the three aspects of Galus, which is subjugation, genocide, and expulsion. So I missed that one point. That he says in 103 that the Maharal is not describing necessarily. He's not at least clarifying how each one corresponds to Yavan, whatever. He's saying these are the three aspects of Galus. You have subjugation, genocide, and you have expulsion. And he says in the last line of 103, V'im kein yesh kan hebed acher. Now we have a new perspective. Now we understand how Malchus Edom includes all of them, because unfortunately over the last 2,000 years, we've had all three. You've had subjugation, you've had genocide, and you've had expulsion. Those are the three aspects of Galus.
He wrote this before the
Holocaust and before, right after the Spanish Inquisition, so he saw that. But so he says, so back over here, that third aspect, which is expulsion, that corresponds to that's the baby nursing and the mother speaking to the wife. He says, Vabal, that's the pshat, by the way, because Velzeh Omer, Mishmera Gimel Ishim Esperes and Baila. Because that's the point, the husband is speaking to the wife, because it corresponds to that relationship, because that relationship can also end with divorce. Mm-hmm. And he says, "V'amer b'mishmar gimel shatinik yanim shnei imai keneged zeh b'seif hagalus yoinkin Yisrael shenechshavu tinikas b'tereira sheyoinkin min shnei imam harishayim shenechshavu imam v'zem b'nei shalei nasla menucha sheyashem makam echad b'mgoyim makam ad shenishkecha b'vnei seina rab mater legam Yisrael b'sibas hagalus." Look at 111. He explains this last part. This is his drush al Torah. V'tinik yoinik mishtei imai. Ki b'mishmar hagimel yesh oid siman sheni. Mashalei timtze b'sham mishmaros. The last mishmar has an additional siman that we don't find by the other two. V'zeh ki mishmar hagimel shukar v'layayim. The last mishmar, which is right before dawn, shu siman hagula, which is right before gula, k'mosh halayla siman galus, kach k'mosh b'seif mishmar zeh tinik yoinik b'shtei imai. Just like at the end, the baby begins to nurse because it's beginning of the day. Kach Yisrael nikrum nar. So to Klal Yisrael, that kufa will be like children. The Talmidei Chacham won't have their own chachma; they'll just have to nurse from svarim. He says, and it's going to be a siman of the lack of knowledge that Klal Yisrael, the Rabbanim, will be like little children, that they'll just have to nurse from other svarim. They won't be able to have within them that knowledge. They'll just have to nurse from other svarim. So he says,
that's where we are now.
That's where we are now.
This is where
The Reish Lakish she'amar shikashem ishlishtan. So when Reish Lakish says that Edom is worse than all three, daita ki kashem ischabrim hashloisha yachad k'moshe etzel malchus revius. That Edom has all these three components together: genocide, expulsion, and subjugation. Kasher kol shesh biyachad isher yazeru v'yoyse kashem nashloisha shemechulakim. They both agree that Edom has all three. Reish Lakish's point is that when all three are together, it's much more difficult to handle. Even though you could handle one on its own, when you put all three together, it's too much. It's that anxiety, stress that pushes it over the top. That's what Rish Lakish was referring to when he said it's worse. They both agree that all three are found within one component. Rabbi Yechon said, well, that means that it's equal to all three. Rish Lakish says, no, it's compounded. When you add all the tzaras together, it's somehow more devastating and more unbearable. And that's what Rish Lakish was referring to. And that's why it's such a long arichos. Meaning, and he says, don't think that it's a negative thing that we're not really masugal for this world. Right? He talked about how Klal Yisrael is really more for the next world. Right. He says that's not necessarily a bad thing. Because that's only true for people that are not intellectually proficient. But those that are, then on the contrary, they could excel in this world as well as in the next world. I will stop. But he says he'll talk about it next time.